Well, hey there, my name's Chelsea. Welcome back to my channel. We're talking about how to get a job in New York City. Before I get into the video, if I work with you and you recognize this, white wall behind me, just know that I'm not on the clock, it's after hours, and I just needed a place to film with natural light. I've been living in New York City for almost 6 years, and I have so much advice about how to get a job in New York City because I've had several jobs in several different industries. So that's why you should watch this, and that's why you should take my advice and listen to me. No, seriously, you don't have to take any advice. Take what you want, leave what you don't. I made a video prior to this about how to make a career change in New York City, and that's if you really just don't even know where to start, completely lost in career, you don't know what path to go on. In this video, you know what you want to do. Now, how do you actually get the job? For different jobs, there's different requirements, so some of these may not apply based on what you want to pursue. Some parts take more time than others for different careers. I mean, sometimes you need a whole education, but we're going to go over like all the preparation for applying, preparation for interviews, like resume tips, interview tips, like virtual and in-person interview aftercare tips, and different procedures, I guess, for like thank you letters, cover letters, all that stuff. Let's just get started, or else this video is going to be like 30 minutes long. The number one tip for resumes is to keep it to one page, unless basically you're like an executive, when you have like 3 or 4 pages of experience to put. But if it's like a run over of a couple paragraphs of your qualifications and education, like find something to delete, make the margins smaller, make the font smaller, just keep it to one page. Especially if you're entry level too, like no employer is gonna dig through a 2-page, 3-page resume for entry level job. Also keep it classic, like stick with the black and white unless you're applying for like design jobs. Like we all know and love Canva. They have amazing templates for resumes, but it may not always be necessary to use these colored templates depending on what job you want to do. So just take that into consideration. I don't want to take away your like creative freedom here. So if you are really passionate about the colors, by all means do it. But as an executive assistant, I see resumes comes through all the time. And the only people that add color to the resumes are the recruiting agencies. In the last video, we talked about the connecting factor between what job you're doing now and like what career path you want to go on. And we found like these key skills and like target words to highlight, skills that you already have and that you can expand on to prove yourself that you can actually do the job that you are applying for, even though you have like technically no experience. You want to use those in your resume. These spicy, hot, fun words, which if you're applying through LinkedIn and stuff, which we'll get to later, sometimes they put resumes through these filters. So that's why I say like put them around your resume. So that way your resume doesn't get surpassed by a robot before a human being actually gets to view your resume. So this is probably my biggest tip for resumes. When you're listing your job tasks on your resume under your experience, don't just list the task, list the impact that the task had on the company in a positive way. So this is your chance to prove to your potential employer that you are qualified to do the job. I guess, for example, doing inventory. You want to expand on that and use like words like create, led. I'll pop some more up on the screen of hot words that you can use, but employers love to watch that. If you put yourself in the shoes of the person reading the resume, you want to be convinced that you can actually, that you made an impact in a positive way. Otherwise, it's like, oh, you did inventory, but did you do a good job? If I was reading a resume, I would look for that. Another resume tip is to not add a picture. I don't know if people do in other states or cities, I don't know, but I never see it, and I think it's kind of tacky in my opinion. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? And also, I wouldn't want people to be judged based on what they look like. The next tip I have is to not list references on your resume. I suggest that you have a section that says your references and then available upon request. Sometimes you're applying to jobs on Craigslist and then you just have like your trusted references, their phone numbers and contact information on the resume, and it's just floating around in hands that you just don't know whose hands they are. Out of like safety and privacy for my people who are like vouching for me, I want to make sure the information's protected. Usually at an interview point, they ask you for your references anyways. And as far as references go too, always check with your references before applying to a job. Like if you've had a reference for a couple years and you haven't like changed jobs in a couple years, you can't assume that that reference is still going to vouch for you. Like reach out to them and say, hey, a heads up, are you still willing to be a reference for me from this job? Here's what I'm applying for. Let them know where you're going, what types of jobs you're applying for, so that way they know sort of how to sell you to the other person. Having and using your references is networking. So just treat that with respect, and also ask them like, do you prefer email? Do you prefer phone number? If you have like a college education or high school education, add the years that you graduated. You can go into detail with that, like what city, what state kind of thing. And you want to add like the dates of employment for each section of your experience. I had a recruiter ask me to add that before they gave my resume to the employer. I think they wanted to know if there were any gaps, but I would suggest adding it so it doesn't look like you're hiding something. When you were researching this job and this industry, whether or not it's a new industry or it's the same industry, a different job, you sort of got an idea on what qualifications you needed to be considered for the role that you want, and different programs that you needed, different levels of education that you needed. So I would add those in a qualification section. It's something like Microsoft Outlook, G Suite, Excel, like social media savvy. But I would suggest only adding things that really could apply to the job that you want. Basically on your resume, you don't want there to be any dead air, but you do have a lot of control on where the eye goes, and you want the focus to really be on your experience. So make that the main chunk. I also do have a summary on my resume too, no more than like 2 or 3 sentences, because it's more focused on the job that you want and why you're qualified and what you're looking for. And then you can add sort of like with a background in blank or something like that. And then a really, really important step is send it to someone that you trust to view and edit your resume and give their feedback. In the last video, we talked about getting coffee with someone in your industry, but maybe they would be a good person to ask to see if they could review your resume and give their feedback. Also, before you start applying, I would draft a cover letter, because some jobs do require a cover letter to be sent along with your resume, and cover letter is only 1 page. I think it's also very short as well, like keep it short and sweet, but I would create some sort of template that you can switch in and out, like the different companies, the different dates, the different addresses, and then leave a part where you can like personalize on this specific company. I would give you more tips on like how to prepare a cover letter, but I'm not that great at it. I didn't really need it that often, and whatever I learned from Google. Also, I would just like to take a moment that if you're finding this helpful, just press the like button. You don't need to subscribe if you don't want to, but just give this a like. The engagement really helps my channel. So now we're ready to apply to jobs. Now, where do you apply in New York City? First one, obviously being Craigslist. I know that a lot of people write off Craigslist because there are a lot of scams and such, but that is actually how I found my breakthrough job in the assistant industry. So I will never write off Craigslist, but the website itself is pretty sketchy and you just never know. So you have to be kind of careful about that. I would say a more trusted website is Indeed. I heard ZipRecruiter is also a good one. I've never personally used it. And then if you don't want to use a website, you can always check a recruiter. The only way I really know how to get a recruiter is either through the job posting itself, like the recruiter obviously posts for the job, and then you get in touch with I'm here. And then you get in touch with the recruiter and they reach out to you and do a screening before passing you off to HR of the company you want to work for. Otherwise, there are recruiters on LinkedIn that will incessantly reach out to you, asking for you to like do a call with them to see if you're a right fit for a role, or like word of mouth. Like that's how I got my current role, is through a recruiter from someone who suggested me to the recruiter, and so that worked out for me. But has anyone watching this video ever reached out to a recruiting agency? If you've used a recruiter in the past, I found it's good to like use them moving forward because they've already done screenings. They sort of know you as a candidate already, and they can maybe do a better like fit or match for you between their clients and yourself. However, with recruiters, they do move really, really quickly. Like they want that commission and I don't blame them. So just be prepared. You should never have to pay for them, by the way. It's always the company that pays for them, but they do move really quickly. So like I started working with a recruiter one day, like on a Monday or Tuesday, and then I had my first interview on like a Thursday or a Friday. So you just have to make sure your resume is ready to go, prepped and ready to go for interview. When you're applying for jobs, it's tempting to do this, and I do this, but like you see an ad and you're like, I'm the perfect fit for this role, and you sort of get your heart set on it, and then you don't get it, and then it's like heartbreak, or like you don't hear back and it's like heartbreak. So if you see something like your dream job, do your best to not get attached to it. Apply, do a really good cover letter if they requested. Make sure your resume, you can always adjust your resume. Maybe different jobs or different companies want to see different things, and that's why research on the company is so, so important, especially once you get an interview. As much as you can know about the company, know it. So like research the company so that way you can sort of tailor your cover letter and resume to that specific job. However, just apply and then let it go and move on and continue to keep looking for other ads. If it works out, if you get an interview, that's great. If it doesn't, there'll be more perfect jobs that will pop up, I promise you. And then make sure to check your email and your spam folder regularly. I'm gonna press you on the spam folder. That'd be devastating if your dream job got back to you via email and it went to your spam folder and you didn't know. And I also would say make sure to update your voicemail to something professional sounding. I feel like that's all I need to say about that. If you see that entry-level jobs are like asking for 2 or more years of experience, apply anyways. Because we're in the middle of the great resignation, companies are needing to step up their game to get good talent. That might be you, even if you have no experience. So don't cut yourself short because they think they need more experience than you do. If you're a fast learner, you can argue this in your interview. Let's talk about red flags to look for in ads. Again, this is all my opinion, so if you say something and you're like, I don't think that's a red flag, that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. A red flag is if they're asking for like round-the-clock availability, like flexibility with schedule, some sort of 24/7 thing. Don't buy it. They just want to take advantage of you. If they use poor grammar and spelling, it's careless, it lacks attention to detail, and it's just like foreshadowing of how they're going to treat you. If they use too many exclamation points in the title, I wrote that one down. It sounds like they're really desperate if they do that. They're trying to really sell the job too much for something that they're not going to be able to live up to. That overly friendly vibe, it just turns me off. So maybe you disagree, but I think we can all agree on this and we're all aware of this one. But if they say, we are family here, like join our family, no, they're your employers, you're their employee, that's it. That's where the relationship ends. It's just them asking you to accept way less for doing way more. Another one is if they don't even list anything in the detail. The more detail they put in their ads, the better, in my opinion, but on Craigslist, they do this too. If it doesn't seem like they put time and effort into it, they're not gonna put time and effort into you, or the job description may be vague and they don't actually know what the job is going to be that you're applying for, and then it could just get really confusing on what your job description actually is. I would just say thank you next to that. If they use like some sort of condescending tone, just watch out, because they may be bitter about the person that's currently in the role not doing something right. It's just them choosing not to focus on the positives when they could. Another red flag could potentially be the amount of time the ad is listed for. Some recruiters and some companies post an ad and then like a week later they take it down and post another one, so that like the time that the ad has been posted is not super long, which indicates that they're having a hard time filling the role. If you're on Craigslist and Indeed and these sites for long enough, you'll sort of be able to recognize these jobs that are constantly posting over and over and over again, and there's a reason for that. Just stay away. And the last red flag is asking for too much experience. Like if you are applying for entry-level job and there asking for like 8+ years. The number of years experience you have in an industry doesn't tell an employer anything about how you actually work. It just means that you were at a job for that long, like you've been doing the job for that long. It doesn't mean that you're actually good at it. For the next section, interview prep. It's definitely good to do this sort of before you're applying, while you're applying. I will leave it up to you in the order in which you would like to do things. The first step is to obviously prepare with interview questions, and I would Google not just like basic interview questions, but interview questions that relate to the specific field that you're pursuing. And it's even like better if they give you example answers also, but I would sort of make them your own as well. They don't want the cookie cutter answer that everyone says, or like, I feel like that would be a red flag if I was interviewing someone like that. What I'm talking about right now is actually the most important step. It's like time to do freaking gymnastics. I wouldn't call it like bullshit gymnastics, but I kind of almost would. You're like twisting your actual experience to fit the qualifications of the role. Like in my interview for assistant, I was referring to my like serving job a lot to like talk about how I'm a good time manager, how I have good attention to detail, and how I'm good at working with the team. They were all examples I was giving from working in a restaurant. Don't lie about anything on your resume. Don't lie about anything in an interview, but you can twist, but you can't like lie, because you still have to back everything up. You don't know who they're going to reach out to ask about you, and if it comes back around to them that you were not telling the truth, then that could look really bad on you. And the industry is super small. Something that really helped me was to YouTube interview questions, and a reader will ask you the question and then they give like a minute of like dead air so that you can talk to your computer screen as if you're like on a Zoom interview and actually have time to respond, and then the interviewer will ask like another question following up. So you like can stay in the flow. It's good practice. And it keeps you aware of like your body language and stuff, like how you channel your nervous energy and is it distracting and such. Like I use my hands a lot, as you can tell. Is that distracting? Probably, but so let me ask you this, YouTube watchers. What would you consider a good interview and why? What would you consider a poor interview and why? Leave it in the comments below. In your interview also, you need to prepare to explain any gaps in your resume, and you can be as honest as you need to be. I think at this point, we've all been through and are still going through a pandemic. Any gaps like that are completely justified. When I interviewed for my first job in a new industry, they asked me about the gap, and I just told them like I got laid off from my 2 restaurant jobs in March 2020, and I really took time to decide what I wanted to do, and that time was invaluable, and I'm really glad I took it because it led me in the direction of a new career, something that I'm really passionate about. Something like that, like just be honest and put a positive spin on it. And put a positive spin on everything as best you can, not in an annoying way, but it helps show your personality, because an interview is a great taste of how you're going to fit into their community and their team. Personality alone cannot get you a job. You can be as lovely as you want, and if you're not qualified, you're not qualified, but personality really does help. It could be the deciding factor between you and another person, but you can't just rely on that and like good looks to get you a job, unfortunately. So it's the day of the interview, and let's say that this is a Zoom interview. What are some of my tips for that? In terms of outfit, I would stay away from patterns and such, because the way the camera picks up on it on your computer, it's not always like so easy on the eye over camera as it is in person. So I would just stick with solid colors. They don't have to be neutral, but just stick with solid colors, or like maybe stay away from like hot green. Look on their social media and sort of, if they have one, or their website, and see like what are people wearing. Are they wearing like grays and blues? Are they wearing sweaters and jeans and stuff? You want to sort of like look like you could really easily fit into the office culture that they have. But I do recommend to actually wear pants if you're doing a Zoom interview. This scenario popped into my head like in the middle of the night one time when I was job interviewing. What if I was wearing sweatpants and like a nice top in my apartment, and the door buzzes or something and it like won't stop buzzing, and I have to get up and walk to my door, during an interview? Like, God forbid that happens, but if you do, then they see like you're wearing sweatpants. Like, you don't want that. If it's like the only time in the day you put on pants, make it your interview. Peace of mind goes a long way. But of course you want to wear something that makes you feel confident. For Zoom interviews, natural lighting is always best. If you do use a ring light, just be mindful of your glasses, and if there's reflection on it. Eye contact is so important in an interview. I would consider maybe contacts in that sense, like if you can't go without your glasses or without a ring light and such. Whew, this is a marathon video. There's so much to get through. Okay, so now we're saying in-person interview in New York City. This is so exciting because you're going to be able to see the actual space. When you're going in for your interview, it's old school, but bring physical copies of your resume in a folder just in case they didn't like have time to print it out or have time to review it. It's a classy move just to pass it off to your interviewer and say like, you came prepared. Always bring a pen. I feel like that's self-explanatory. You just never know. And when this is actually one of my favorite tips, like when you're in the elevator going up, or like when you're right outside the building about to go in, find a place like where you won't be seen and like stand like a superhero. I think this was this a Grey's Anatomy thing? Like they did a superhero stance. Like, what are you doing, Meredith? Or something like that. And she's like, I'm standing like a superhero because it's a psychological trick that makes you feel more confident if you hold it for like 30 seconds and then you just feel like you can rule the world. And I think that there's something to be said about like a heart opening. It brings your shoulders back and you exude way more confidence. This should go without being said, but arrive early. And New York City subways, we all know, are a hot mess. So really add in like an extra half hour, 45 minutes for train traffic just in case. And if your train is delayed, don't leave your train unless it's absolutely not going to go anywhere for a taxi. Honestly, I've made this mistake so many times where the taxi just gets stuck in traffic again, and then you're out $40 and you still have to like run in your heels to your interview. Stay on the train, or like transfer trains. Don't mess with above ground traffic. Plan your route ahead of time. Plan alternate routes ahead of time, this being subway routes. One less thing to think about on the day up, so you can just focus on being calm, cool, and collected. Definitely prepare questions for your interview. Try and get like the juicy questions. A good one lately is like, how has the pandemic affected the company and what is the company doing to move forward from that, and how has that affected like future plans for the company. It's also good to know like how the business is doing before you're about to sign on. Like you don't want to get a job and a year later you're out of a job because the company went bankrupt because of COVID or something. So I think that's a completely valid question to ask. One of my favorite questions to ask in an interview is, how do you define sex? Did I almost say sex? How do you define success in this role in the first 6 months to a year? And for my assistant interview, I also asked like, what are a couple things that the person in this past role did that you really liked and you'd like to continue, and what are a couple things that you would like to avoid moving forward? And I go back to like my statement earlier about researching the company before you go into it. A really good reason why is when I went in the interview, we walk in, we greet each other, take our masks off, whatever, and say, I'm going to turn the tables on you and I'm going to have you interview me. What do you want to know about me? And this is a great chance for you to flex the knowledge that you already have. You just don't want to be stuck there having not knowing anything about the company, expecting them to tell you everything, and like that's just you not taking initiative, and it shows the interviewer that you didn't really prepare for this and that maybe you don't want it as much as another candidate. The last interview tip that I have is to check your teeth before your interview. You just don't want kale stuck in there, you know? So now you're done with the interview, what do? There is one more step you need to do. I mean, I would play it by ear. Some jobs I've written a thank you letter, some jobs I haven't. The recruiters that I've worked with have told me I should write a thank you letter, but when I've applied for jobs without a recruiter, I didn't really even know that that was a part of like New York etiquette, but it definitely is depending on the job. Like put yourself in the employer's shoes. Would that candidate stand out if they messaged you a thank you letter versus the other candidates, or would it make them seem desperate? So like the balance I found is doing a thank you letter around 24 hours after your interview. In terms of drafting the thank you letter, I have not mastered this actually. I think this is where I've like really missed out on some opportunities because my thank you letters were not like on point. I would say like my best advice from experience is just to keep it short and have someone proofread it before you mail it out. I wrote down sort of a template, but it's something along the lines of, thank you so much for your time yesterday to further discuss the role of blank. I enjoyed learning more details about blank and blank and blank. After our discussion, I feel confident that I could be a great fit for this role based on this experience, and I look forward to hearing from you regarding next steps. And it's just something short. So I think in that case, a thank you letter I would appreciate. But if it's like a candidate sending you a novel to read, it's just like no one has time for that. And then you just let it go. That's all you can do. The more you try and push it after that, it's just gonna annoy them. Focus on keeping the ball rolling and not putting all your eggs in one basket. The worst thing that could happen is that you get 2 job offers and then you just leverage them on each other for a higher salary. Another piece of etiquette is to not add anyone on LinkedIn from that company until you actually hired there. I think that's really tacky. Personally, I don't add anyone on LinkedIn that I don't actually know or like have more than 1 degree of like separation with, I guess. How do you handle rejection and acceptance? The only way to do it is with positivity and with grace. Just take a moment to be sad and move on. It wasn't meant to be yours at this time. And even though you didn't get this role, the interview process still continues. You never know what could be in store for you down the line in the future. Is that redundant? Yes, it is. I mean, this is New York. There's so many people. There's so many industries, but the communities are really small. The networks are really small, and everybody knows everybody. I mean, just leaving your house and going on the subway is networking. How you present yourself matters. How you respond matters. How you react matters. A burnt bridge in the city is not a good look, and you are fully in control of that. And that also includes, if you do get the job, congratulations, and then leave your current role with respect, because sometimes the grass isn't always greener and you might need to go back. I'm not going to go on any longer. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking around. If this was helpful for you, subscribe and share this with your friends, and make sure to like this video. The engagement helps my channel grow. I love you all so much. Good luck with your job. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Let's help each other out. I love y'all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.